Good evening, everybody. It's a real pleasure to welcome you to this evening's event. I would really like to extend a warm welcome to our staff, students, alumni and supporters from around the world who have joined us tonight. We think there's at least 300 people on the call, so hopefully you're in for a real treat. And we've got some fantastic, inspiring women to talk to you tonight about their experiences. I'm Wendy Appleby and I'm the Vice President Operations at the University of Southampton. I've been here since October and I'm really enjoying it, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here on the evening of International Women's Day to be hosting this event. We are going to be celebrating social, economic, cultural and political achievements from women around the world tonight. And also just a quick kind of off the press headline. I'm really delighted to say that the university has heard that it got a silver award in the Athena Swan Charter Mark, which is something that's specifically around how we support women in their careers. So that's really brilliant news, which is really fresh tonight. So we have our three joiners who we have two members of our alumni community with us tonight and one of our academic colleagues. And we have a Slido. So what we're going to do is I'm going to introduce each of the three speakers. They will then say something about themselves. And then we've got some questions, which I know the sorts of things that are on the tip of your tongues or have been pre-submitted. And then there will be time for audience questions. So if you've got the Slido, please do put your questions in there. Please do vote for questions that you really want to hear asked, and hopefully we will get to ask them. It looks like we've already lost one of our speakers. Just to let you know that while Lorna and Nisreen and myself are all in the UK, Mfon is dialing in from Nigeria, and she's been having a few connectivity issues. She was with us just now, so hopefully she'll rejoin at the appropriate point. So without further ado, it's my absolute pleasure to first of all introduce Lorna Tilbian. Lorna Tilbian is an investment banker. She was appointed executive chairman of Dowgate Capital in January 2019 and a board member of Dowgate Wealth in November 2021. Alongside a distinguished career as a #1 ranked media analyst by Institutional Investor and Extel from 1987 to 2012, Lorna was founder in 2001 of Numis, the leading independent investment bank, where she served on the main board and headed the Numis Media Investment Banking franchise from 2012 until her retirement in 2018. Lorna sits on the advisory board of Tech Nation's Future 50 programme and also serves on boards of Rightmove plc, Finsbury Growth and Income plc and Proven VCT plc. She was formerly a non-exec director of Euromoney, Institutional Investor plc, M&C Saatchi plc and Jupiter UK Growth Trust plc. And she has acted as a Cabinet Creative and Business International Network Ambassador for the Department of Digital Culture, Media and Sport. Wow, what a set of achievements, Lorna. Can't wait to hear from you tonight. Very big welcome, and I'd like to invite you to just say a few words about yourself as well and of welcome.
Great. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, everybody. Well, that woman sounds quite busy. Right. Well, so I set off, believe it or not, after Southampton to become a journalist. And I got a job in classified sales at Haymarket Publishing, the home of a famous sort of campaign advertising Bible. But actually, I wanted to be a journalist, not sell classifieds. And then the opportunity came in 1984 when the city, there was a flotation of Reuters and the flotation of BT, and the city was looking for people who were analysts in advertising and marketing communications. So I thought, well, that's it. If I can't write in campaign, I'll write in the city. The only thing is the interview, the first thing I was asked is, what did I think the operating margin of a typically well-run advertising agency should be? Now, I had studied English and history at Southampton. So there's a bit of a problem there. They're asking me a maths question. So I just said, well, if you tell me what an operating margin is, then I might be able to work out at which stage. And the interviewer laughed and said, actually, analysis is all about building an investment case. And that's actually storytelling. So if you've read English and history, you can tell stories. And that's how my adventure started. And, 38 years later, I'm still telling stories. And I've witnessed 4 cycles, economic cycles. From the great, the great crash of 1987 after the storm, to the debacle of the ERM in 92, and the dot-com crash of 2000, the 9/11 and the terrorism in 2001, the great financial crisis of 2008, the pandemic of 2020, and now the tragedy of Ukraine. And the real sadness actually is the current situation is all those awful turning events rolled up in one, plus the 74 oil crisis. So the world is looking a very dangerous place tonight, actually. And so, I've had to sort of spend the last few days looking at the screens and thinking, my God, these are all those calamities rolled up in one. High valuations like .com, banks tumbling like during the great financial crisis, Russian ones in this case, deep recession around the corner, not good. But on a happier note, in those 38 years, I managed to work at 3 different brokers and bankers, telling stories about these turning points. I was the first female director of SG Warburg, which is a preeminent bank in the city back in the 80s. And halfway through the journey in 2001, decided that actually we'd seen a few cycles and we wanted to do our own thing, and bought a stake in a small broker called Numis that had been loss-making for 11 years, and spent the next 17 years turning it around, despite these backdrops of calamities and 9/11 and global financial crisis. And it was the best fun, because actually you had to use every different sort of ability or different, whatever you had to put into it, because we were a startup and we'd taken on the giants of Wall Street, and they were the economics of the madhouse. They could go bust and get rescued by the Fed, and Merrill Lynch by Bank of America, and Morgan Stanley by the Japanese, but nobody was going to rescue us. And it was our capital at risk, and so we had to be really careful and put the client above everything else, and the money and the success flowed from that. And so after 25 years of being an analyst and now a founder, I pivoted into banking in 2012, and then retired in 18 with a portfolio of half a dozen non-exec directorships, and went on my first ever mini gap year. Didn't have those back in the 70s, so this was very exciting. And halfway through the gap year, one of my ex-colleagues and co-founders at Numis phoned to say Sir Martin Sorrell had left WPP and wanted to start another business, and did I have one more advertising and Marcom's business in me? And so here I am, back at work, chairing Dowgate and backing and promoting proven entrepreneurs. So along with Martin Sorrell, we've got people like Ayman Asfari, who built Petrofact into a FTSE company, Stephen Hemsley, who built Domino's, Dave Montgomery, who built local news, now doing national news, Stephen Hemsley doing franchise brands, Mr. Asfari doing Venterra wind renewables, and Martin Stoll obviously S4. So all these people like me have been busily reinventing themselves, and with their city fan club and great and deep experience building new businesses. So I'm sort of still hooked and still doing it, and I hope that's 5 minutes.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful, Lorna. Thank you so much for that introduction, and we're really looking forward to hearing more from you. And while you were speaking, I'm absolutely delighted to say that Mfon has managed to reconnect, and you've got your camera connected as well, Mfon, so we can see you, which is absolutely brilliant. So I'm just going to say a few words of introduction about Mfon and then hand over to her to tell you a bit more about herself. Where are we? Mfon is a certified human behaviour consultant. She served as a member of the President's Advisory Council and is a two-time recipient of the Golden Quill Award by the National Academy of Best-Selling Authors in Hollywood. Wow. Mfon has multiple degrees in maritime law, business law and journalism, and is an international speaker and a coach to top business CEOs. You're also one of our alums, aren't you, Mfon? And you had some really great stories when we met before about your time learning at Southampton. Mfon was appointed an honorary citizen and goodwill ambassador of the state of Arkansas in 2014 and voted most influential woman, one of the most influential women in Nigeria by Leading Ladies of Africa in 2017. So again, a wonderful set of achievements there. And Mfon, so a big warm welcome to you. And please do tell us a bit more about yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be on, and I'm glad to be on camera. I had to choose between just voice and putting my face out there. All right, so I am alum as well, of course, and I'm one of those who represent the alums that segue from what they studied to what they're actually like doing right now. So I studied maritime law with a special interest in aviation law. They gave us the room to choose kind of like disciplines we're interested in. So I had did something in aviation law as well as maritime law. And on getting back to Nigeria, I realized that in the maritime sector, as well as in the entrepreneurial sector, there was a scarcity of women-led ideas and women-led projects. And so I sought out to, just went out to find out why, because, when you sit down with women and talk about your ideas, that there's no scarcity in-house, informally. So I wanted to find out why there was a scarcity like in the sector. And so that's when I segued into helping women translate their ideas into viable and sustainable businesses, because it wasn't that there was a scarcity of ideas, it was that they did not know the how of putting their ideas out there, taking it to corporate, making it formal, taking it from being a side hustle to a real business. And so that's why I segued from law to mentoring women in entrepreneurship and just teaching women how to translate their ideas from just thought to actually tangible, viable businesses that kind of revolutionize the economy and their society. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Well, it's great to have you here with us, Mfon, and welcome back to the University of Southampton, even though you're, of course, sat in a different continent at the moment. But back a little bit closer to the south coast of England, I'd like to now move on to our third speaker, who's Dr. Nizrene Elwan. I'm really pleased to introduce Nisreen, who's well known within the university community and is an associate professor in public health here at the university. She's also an honorary consultant in public health at University Hospital Southampton, and Nisreen is an alumna of Southampton as well. So three of you all studied here. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Dr. Alwan contributed to the public health response by coordinating and leading several collective outputs from senior UK public health academics, and more recently by focusing on the recognition and quantification of morbidity from COVID-19, having initiated the call to count long COVID. The call to count long COVID. I think I've said that right, Nisreen, but I'm sure you'll put me right when you get onto yourself if I've got anything wrong. Nisreen was awarded an MBE for services to medicine and public health during the COVID-19 pandemic in the Queen's New Year's Awards, New Year's Honours Awards of 2021. She was also named amongst other inspiring and influential women from around the world in the BBC 100 Women 2020 list. Liz, who was that? Nisreen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here on the panel. Over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I'm so glad to be here. I've really been looking forward to this conversation all day. So great. I'm just gonna maybe tell you a bit more about where I come from. So I grew up in Baghdad in Iraq, and that's where I spent my childhood, and then did my university degree there as well in medicine. So I basically spent most of my childhood where the country I was in was in some state of war. So I completely feel, everybody, women, children particularly, but everybody in Ukraine now, but also in many other war-torn countries and conflicts, because if you live through war, particularly as in your younger years, it never leaves you really, and maybe that is the things that happen to you outside your control, perhaps subconsciously, actually dictated a bit my career in public health, because it's really focused about what can we do on a collective population level to make lives better. So I came to the UK to do a Masters of Public Health after I graduated in medicine from Baghdad University. So I came to Nottingham, and then I went into so my interest in public health was right from the start, but then I wanted to do clinical medicine and see how it goes. So I went into clinical medical training, and that was in Yorkshire, in Leeds, based in Leeds. But I enjoyed clinical training actually, but then moved back into public health because of my passion for public health, but also for practical reason, which we might discuss later. I already had a baby, my first baby at the time, and it was really hard to juggle, kind of clinical shifts and work with motherhood. Then I went, while I did my public health training there, but I really wanted to do research. I was interested in the academic side of public health. So I did a PhD, I did first a master's in statistical epidemiology and then a PhD in nutritional epidemiology in Leeds. And then I eventually moved to Southampton a few years ago, where I'm working at the moment. The COVID, the pandemic has been obviously life-changing to all of us, career-wise in public health. It's been, something very impactful. Most people didn't know what public health was, and you had to always explain what it means to them, and more people know what public health is now, obviously with mixed feelings and emotions about how useful and kind of how much they love it or hate it. But basically, it was a big challenge, and I in the first wave I got ill with COVID, and then I got long COVID. Just didn't get better, and that triggered my kind of work around long COVID, because nobody was talking about this at the time in terms of the long-term effects of the virus. So I started working on that more, and it was a difficult time, because it was I had to share my personal story. Of actually getting, of me not recovering. And that was difficult because, for me, from kind of a professional point of view, to say, actually, I want to say something professionally about measuring long COVID and impact long COVID, but I'm going to bring my story to actually let you, to show you what I'm trying to say. And that kind of reinforces what Lorna said about stories. So in science, stories are really, really important as well, even though we're not so much trained to tell them. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Nisreen. That's just a really incredible introduction, and you've clearly had some really powerful and impactful life experiences that you're drawing on for our audience tonight. So what we're going to do now is we're going to, now we've welcomed our three speakers and you heard a bit more about who you've got on the call here. We're going to just go into a few questions, as I said, that we've come in previously, or we thought that probably be topical and our audience would be interested to hear what our panel think about it. But please do be posting your own questions, because there will be time for your questions, or voting for questions that others have posted and you want to see get right to the top, so you can make sure that they get asked to our panel. So I'm going to start off by asking all of you, and I'll just pick one of you randomly to go first. What the biggest barrier you've experienced in your what was the biggest barrier that you've experienced in your professional career, and how you actually managed to overcome it? So Mfon, perhaps we could start with you on that one. Is that okay?
That's fine. So the biggest barrier for me in my career was just having the confidence to go it on my own. It's one thing to work within a corporate setting where, you know, you do your job and your salary is paid by someone else. It's another thing, completely different ball game, to say, I want to set out on my own. I don't know whether this idea I have can sustain long term in terms of, can it pay people's salaries? Can it be the source of their insurance, for instance? It's just like, look, I have this idea, and I realized that was also the barrier for most women. It's like, can I do this thing on the side? When I do it on the side, there's not a lot of risk and not a lot of people who are affected by it. But can this one idea sustain a business? For me, it was, I like helping people translate their ideas to businesses. Now, can I make a business of that, even though that's what I really want to do? Can I hire people long term for this? Would this be sustainable? So the barrier was believing my own idea was worth, you know, putting out there, building an institution off. So it was just getting the confidence to go it, to put it all on that idea and develop it. So I overcame that by doing it. Because that's the thing that I say, you know what, you can agonize about it, you can dream about it, you can think about it forever. You only get over the hump by actually doing it. And so I did it, test the idea, put it in the market, and so from one client to 2 to 3 to hundreds. And then we started doing seminars around Africa. And then, you know, I started having the schedule packed, booked up until, you know, 3 years later. And it just was like, oh my gosh, this works. I have a place in the marketplace. So yeah, that was it for me.
Great start to that question. Thank you so much. Lorna, what about you? What was the biggest barrier you had to face, apart from that interview that you told us about at the beginning?
Yeah, it didn't start easy. Well, actually, funny enough, very similar to Mfon, that actually the barriers were within my own head, because I realised that markets truly never sleep. It's a very competitive industry, and you have to choose. And I had to choose really between a career and a family life, because, you know, to be good at what we do, you know, you got to be obsessed or be average. That's sort of our mantra, really. And behind all the success, there's a sacrifice, because, you know, it's impossible really to have it all, because having it all is doing it all, and doing it all is exhausting. You know, you've got at least, and, you know, Wendy, you're a mother, you've got at least 5 jobs. You know, you're trying to do your career, you're trying to look after your family, you're trying to look after your husband, you're trying to look after your home, maybe a bit of time for yourself to stay sane. And actually, that is really very hard work. And you feel you're shortchanging everyone, and you're feeling guilty. And I'm not really good at feeling that. And so I just had to make the sacrifice of actually not following my former husband to Japan, where he was going to build HMV, and actually staying in London and building Numis. And in case other women ask me, I haven't regretted it for 1 minute.
Oh, brilliant. That's so great, Lorna. Nisreen, what about you? Yeah,
really difficult question to narrow it down, I guess, Wendy. I guess the main barrier is telling me, or getting these constant messages about what the barriers are. It's really kind of about being schooled by the system, in kind of in your expectations, being also schooled in not being me and not accepting me or accepting me as I am. That if I accept myself as I am, then I won't make it because of all of these barriers. So therefore, I will have to change, otherwise I fail. So I guess it's it's the do this, do that, say this, write in this way. It's kind of the implicit indoctrination, particularly if you're a woman, that you have to change and you have to follow these molds, otherwise you won't succeed. Whatever that means, because obviously success is defined in a certain way, mostly by men. So I think that I'm not quite sure I overcome that. I have overcome that, but I think I'm more aware of it. And I just decided to kind of risk it again, like Mfon said, just risk it, do the things that make me feel I'm being me, because life is short, and see what happens.
That's really good advice. And I think that probably what we're going to discover, there's going to be a number of themes coming out tonight that will probably strike quite a big chord with our audience. Certainly confidence and self-belief, but also being authentic and being yourself. And that's okay, actually, not having to be like somebody else or be a man or do anything else. And I think another thing that's coming out again, which a woman who I worked with very early in my career, and I got promoted, I moved to another job, and it's one of the best pieces of advice she ever gave me, which is just, don't shy away from things. If there's problems or there's challenges, just get in there and do it. And I think what we've heard from Lorna as well is that you can't do everything, and that's kind of okay too, because sometimes if we're successful in our careers, we can almost try and set the bar too high for ourselves, and I think we probably have all experienced that at some point, and might recognise that. So let's move on and think a bit more about how the pandemic has impacted on our working lives. Obviously, we've been working a lot more in a virtual world, and that has really worked for a lot of women. It's created a lot more flexibility where they have demands on their time. The question to you three is how you see the future, how we go forward from the positive things that we've learned from the pandemic and how that's benefited from us. So perhaps maybe we'll start with you, Lorna, this time.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Well, funny enough, I think if you're trying to do the juggling we were talking about, and you're a mother, I think actually being able to have the flexibility and work from home, and typically now it seems to be 3 days a week, twats, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. And so that actually means, and women are good at sort of, balancing things and multitasking. I think it does actually work. And in a way, 38 years ago, it was an option. I think my life would have been a lot cushier, because actually getting suited and booted and all the hassle of commuting and, getting there, rolling your sleeves up, 15 hours later getting home. I mean, it I think is an advantage. On the other hand, people think being a woman in the city must be a big disadvantage. But actually being a woman in the city in the analog world, rather than this new digital world, was actually great, because you could wear colourful red pinstripes and stand out from all the grey suits, and it's all about creating your brand and differentiating yourself. And so that was actually, being a woman was a big advantage. At the end of a meeting, they'd say, any questions? You'd put up your hand. Well, it's ladies first, and I was the only ladies. That was okay. I get my question in first. Then there's a dinner or a lunch. They'd sit you to the right side of the CEO. There's the other lady. So you get a complete him to yourself. So you ask all the questions, beat the boys. So actually, in the old world, being a woman was good. So I just hope now we're not going to hide behind Zoom and Teams and not be out there kind of punching above our weight. That's my only concern.
Okay, that's really good advice. So no hiding behind Zoom and Teams. So let's hear, Nisreen, a bit more about punching above your weight. What have you got to say about how you see the future of work now?
I mean, I think the virtual connection has been a life changer for many women, including me. I certainly wouldn't have achieved what I've achieved so far if I had to in the old non-virtual, completely non-virtual world. So I wouldn't want to choose that. I mean, I've suffered with this practical barriers all of my career, to be at the right time in the right place, to be in, to be part of the right conversation. As a mother of 3 children, and then I'm divorced as well, so really a lone parent for the last few years of my children. But actually, is it the right time and the place? I mean, particularly in our field, in science and academia, if a big proportion of us can't be there or really struggle to be there, and I think the pandemic came and it changed things, in that it changed things in a positive and negative way. So there's been a lot of pressure on women in other ways, in academia, in terms of, their productivity, in terms of their work, obviously with the children in lockdowns. But I think this is a positive one where we can be in the virtual room, even if the children are, around us and kind of climbing on us. Then you are listening to the conversation. You're there. You're getting what's going on. So I hope we move forward and take the positives out of this, and move forward.
Thank you, Nisreen. Yeah, and I've noticed quite a lot of cats and dogs climbing on people as well as children, I think, or walking across the keyboards and things. How about you, Mfon? How's the pandemic affected your working life, and what are your hopes for the future?
Well, I think, and I speak for just more than myself, actually, what women used to ask for, I think with the pandemic, the rest of the world has come to experience it. What women used to ask for in terms of time to work from home, time to prioritize maybe mental health, time to flexibility, just give us the option of flexibility to have a life outside work. Those things were kind of frowned upon at some points, kind of like what Lorna said. If you wanted to be taken seriously, you have to come into corporate with kind of like an obsessive kind of focus, and something had to give for that type of focus. And so the rest of the world kind of breathing together this COVID pandemic, everyone kind of going home, taking a sit back, being surrounded by family. The men have lost their hair trying to just work from home. And it kind of gives all of us a kind of like a balanced playing field. Now we don't see the person who's asking for maternity leave, who's asking for more months, as lazy, because kind of like the whole world experience what it is to actually stay at home and be with family while you're working. So I think that's the advantage. For instance, the McKinsey Global Institute reports that the Nigerian gross domestic product could grow by 23%, or that translates to $229 billion. By 2025, if women participated in the economy, and that report came out almost like 8 years ago, before the pandemic ever happened. And so now we're seeing that even with some of the destruction that happened with the pandemic, of course, sometimes, violence against women shut up, like I said before, just in the workplace. More women are now able to participate in the flexible type of work schedules. So it's allowing more women actually participate in the workspace, and that would increase the GDP. Hopefully, if they're allowed to sustain that. I see more people fighting against going back to the workplace. Even men are championing the cause of saying we're not going back to the way it was before. So hopefully that kind of gives women more of a window to participate in the workspace the way they would like to participate in it.
Yeah, thank you, Mfon. And so it sounds, again, themes coming out from all our speakers about flexibility and women being able to work in the way they want to work as much as anything. But Mfon, we're just going to stay with you for a minute, and I've got a question here just directed specifically at you, and I'm very interested to know what advice you would give to a young woman starting out on her career now.
Oh, wow. Uh, if you're starting your career now, I would say experiment and explore. Before you specialize, experiment and explore. And this is sometimes counterintuitive. And I often speak in seasons. I often say there's a season to focus. There will come a season after experimentation and exploration to focus. But um, if you're because experimentation, it's like when Lorna said, sitting by the boss, you have time to ask questions. That's the core of what experimentation does. I can be in this department and this other department that I like says, you know what, there's a job opening, explore, send in your CV. Like, you have the time when you first start out. You have the time for mistakes. You have the time for growth. That at a certain level in the corporate ladder, in your work ladder, the tolerance for mistakes get really low. So it's kind of like if you just start making mistakes as VP, everybody's gonna be like, but you are the vice president. You should know. If the tolerance level is completely kind of obliterated once you focus and you start growing in the levels of those things. So I often like plot a graph and say discover, then develop and deploy. So discover first, then develop in the interest you've discovered, and then deploy. Focus on that thing, but experiment first.
That's really good advice. Thank you so much. And yeah, I hope I don't make too many mistakes, Mfon, but as we said earlier, we are all human as well. A couple of quick questions for Nizreen and Lorna as well. So Nizreen, I just wanted to ask you about the intersectionality mentoring scheme that you lead here at the university, where you're focusing on supporting women from ethnic minorities in their careers in medicine. So I just wonder if you could just give us a quick kind of nugget about what that's all about and what the participants are getting from it.
Yeah, I mean, a few years ago, I went to a leadership program just for women, so a woman leadership program in kind of science and medicine, and it was great. One part of it was to match us with mentors, so we could kind of select. We can kind of select, mentors who were established in their careers. And I looked through the choices, and there was a big list of mentors. They had blurbs about them, and I was thinking, I want somebody who has similar characteristics like me, because they might share the same challenges, and also that's something to look up to. Like, they made it in that career and in their field, and I just couldn't find anyone. I couldn't find anyone with the same characteristics, woman from an ethnic minority, but also a mom, have 3 children, so juggling all of these things together. I did really feel very down about it. I thought, well, actually, can I, achieve things and be more successful? So this program really kind of addresses that. We started on my work in faculty of medicine in Southampton to kind of do some peer support for women from ethnic minorities, and actually that theme came from others as well, saying we want to see these people with the similar characteristics in leadership positions, and we want to talk to them. And you can't really find that in single institutions. You need to go wider. So we thought, why don't we go wider across UK medical schools and establish this really very simple idea of, mentoring and peer support for women from ethnic minorities. But obviously we recognize there are all other intersectional characteristics that people, lots of minoritized group. Intersectionality really is very, very important to recognize that people are not one single dimension. So I'm not only a woman, I'm a woman with these other characteristics. And there are other minoritized people from minority background who struggle. So we want to take it in stages. But that's it, basically matching women for, so that they could talk about the challenges, they could feel that somebody could understand where they're coming from and go from there. So it's called AIMS, Academic intersectionality mentoring in medical schools. So you can search it up, and women who are in academic medicine and health sciences could sign up for it in the UK.
That sounds really brilliant, and you're absolutely right that people. It's really important for people to see people who share their own characteristics in senior roles or in similar sorts of roles or things they would aspire to do.
I was just going to say, if I may, it's not discrimination. It's kind of treating you like you're other, in the sense of, you know, in your 20s, and I'm talking from the city. In your 20s, all they want to do is date you. In your 30s, they're hoping you get married, have children, and never come back. By your 40s, they become a bit competitive and political because, God, she's still around. And then in your 50s, they play the ageist card. And in a business where actually it's all about experience, because you know, if you've seen it before, if you read the book, you're kind of better at knowing the ending than someone who's never read it. And so just when your experience should really count, they play the ageist card. Because actually, like Nizreen, I'm Armenian, and you know, the grandchild of refugees and from Cyprus, so lived through the Turkish invasion, then recently in Armenia with Nagorno-Karabakh. And it never leaves you. But actually, you know, it was those sort of seminal experiences that made me think, you know, you're not like going to get me down. You're not going to get me down. You try, but I'm made of better stuff than that. So it was my own experiences that actually, because all my girlfriends, every time there's a downturn, they left because, you know, it's just too much like hard work, really. Yeah.
But you were made of tougher stuff, Lorna. And Mfon, what about you? Have you experienced open discrimination? How did you overcome it, if you did?
I agree with Nisreen that that's a very kind of like wide in vague term, because it could be discrimination coming from anywhere. And sometimes the perpetrators don't even really see it as discrimination. So I might whittle it down, but to give kind of like a generalistic answer, I would say it's hard. I've realized that it's really difficult to discriminate long-term against competence. It's really difficult.
Yeah.
And piggyback on what Lorna said and what Nisreen said, at some point you're excellent enough and you're competent enough, and you also don't shy away from the big positions. And that's, I think, why Lorna said, you know, going for the non-executive roles was a mistake, because then how can we change stuff if we don't go to the positions that we can then call out this discrimination? So I often say, be competent enough to grow in the industry, in the sector. Just, it's kind of like have a goal, like have a focused goal. And I've done this in my career, and of course, I can tell already that Lorna has done this over and over again, and Nisreen has done this. And even Wendy is like, be focused enough and say, this is where I'm going to the top. I may not necessarily condone it, but I will not let that deter me from continuing. Yeah. To the point where I can then make the decisions, because at that point it's hard to discriminate against competence and excellence at that point.
Yeah, and it takes quite a lot of confidence and drive to do that, which is quite interesting. And so our next question is a bit more about success. And this is from an anonymous poster who's asked, in a fast-paced culture and an environment that seems to reward extroversion, how can competent, soft-spoken and introverted women stand out and deliver? And how can fellow women support each other to grow career-wise? So panel, what are your thoughts on that? Lorna, anything in particular from you? Start with you.
I guess, I mean, not all careers, you know, demand extroverts. I mean, there are, you know, introverts, but actually, fun enough, in the city, the analysts, of which I used to be one, were seen as a sort of the ivory tower, the introverts, you know, they're sort of sitting there analysing. But actually, the extroverts were the bankers and the salesmen and, you know, the ones with the, you know, the kind of pushy attitudes. And actually, I think there's a time to be extrovert and a time to be introvert, to sort of to think, and time to think and time to act. I think you need both really to succeed in the world we live in, actually.
Thank you, Lorna. Any thoughts, Nizreen and Mfon, from you two on that one?
Well, I think I'm going to speak on the side of maybe being a speaker, a trainer, and a coach that helps other people present their ideas. Sadly, the louder you are, the more attention you get. And I say sadly because the noise may not always come with substance, but it has its place. And so what I teach people to do is define what extroversion is and define what introversion is. The point is you have to speak out for your idea. No matter the spectrum on the ladder you are, whether you're extrovert, whether you're introvert, you have to learn to speak out for your idea, because then no other person will. That's why we saw there was a time in corporate where the technical people and people behind the scenes were not getting promoted because they were not the ones. There was no Silicon Valley at that time. There was nothing to even make the people in tech stand out, except that after a while they started speaking up for their ideas. They stopped working behind the scenes and started speaking up for their ideas, and the whole tech boom happened. And so my advice would be, whatever side of the spectrum you are in, whether extroversion or introversion, redefine that in terms of, I'm an introvert, but I would not hesitate to speak up for my ideas. I think that changes the whole label.
Yeah. And being your authentic self in doing that as well.
Absolutely.
But it does take confidence. Nisreen, any thoughts from you? Or I've got lots of other questions. We're going to go rapid fire soon.
Let's go. I mean, I think quick one is, I think we have extroversion versus introversion. We have a lot of platforms now that people could kind of express their idea on. So some might be really confident in, speaking to a camera about things. Some might want to write it. We've got the social media now. We've got the blogs. We've got, I think it's about you really knowing yourself and knowing what are you most comfortable in terms of medium, expressing your idea. But I do agree with Mfon. It's really about expressing your idea. And you always, if it's something authentic that belongs to you and you're passionate about it, you will express it well, whether you're introvert or extrovert. It's when we get things imposed on us to express, that's where, maybe the extrovert might do a bit better because they can kind of, because they feel better about sharing. But I think if it's something coming from inside of you, I think, that sort of personality difference is what matters so much. I mean, I come as extrovert in personality test, but actually I really, really, really love my quiet time, downtime. I don't like conflict, so I don't know how I work, but I think I'm a strange combination.
Yeah. I'm going to follow on from that, and I'm just going to pick on one of you because we've only got about sort of 5 or 6 minutes there. So I'm just going to randomly pick you for an answer, one of you three. I'm going to follow on from that question though with one from Susanna, who's asked, why do you think women suffer more than men with confidence issues, and how do you think we can overcome this? So I think I'm just gonna go back to you on that one, Nisreen, because you sort of seem to react to that and recognise that.
Well, I think we kind of get taught that this is an internal problem. It's society is reflecting that on us. Everybody keeps talking about imposter syndrome and how we we need to overcome it from inside, but actually a lot of it is society and others treating us as imposters. So we obviously eventually internalize this. I think just realizing that might flip things around a bit and saying, well, it's not an internal problem. It's just I'm not genetically not confident because I'm a woman or because of whatever. I'm just internalized you know, the interactions that I've had throughout my life, you know, cultural, societal, you know, professional, and I'm just not, you know, I'm going to recognize that, and I think just that recognition, awareness, for me, it makes a difference. It's always the kind of the worry, the, you know, the moments of you want to go and hide under the bed, the lack of confidence, they're always they're still there, definitely for me. But I think just being more aware of yourself, and how you interact with the outside world.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with you, Nisreen. It's really recognizing it, and actually recognizing it that it's quite normal. And I think we always think it's just us and it's not normal, but actually it's quite normal to feel these things. I'm going to move us on. This one I'm going to throw to you, Lorna. Someone anonymous has asked, in order to help break the bias, how do we help women with caring responsibilities advance in the workplace? What have you learned from your experience, and any top tips that you can share?
Well, it's hard actually, but I think the pandemic has made that easier, in that for working mothers and caring actually, you know, for their parents as well as their children and their home, being able to work flexibly, I think has made the big difference, and being able to sort of, you know, work from home and just be at the office 3 days a week, and in some cases 2. I think technology has actually enabled women.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Lorna. Mfon, I'm going to come to you with this question that I've got here from Judith McGregor, who said, I think women wanted to be treated like men. Now we all want to be treated equally, but as women. Do the panel agree, or do you agree, Mfon? And how can we be better risk takers? Have you got any thoughts on that, Mfon? It's quite a tricky one.
Sorry, Wendy, could you repeat yourself? The network.
Yeah. So the questioner asked, where she expressed the view that in the past women might have wanted to be treated more like men, but now we want to be treated more equally as women. Do you agree with that? And also, how can we be better risk takers?
I don't necessarily think women wanted to be treated like men. I think they wanted to be treated to the standard that we were treating men. It's always been about the standard, not the sex or the personality. It's just like, if you pay him this, I would like you to pay me this. So, and it has not changed. So we can call it different names. We can tweak it, but we've always wanted to like, don't move the goalpost when it comes to women. If that's the goalpost, tell us that's the goalpost, and then let's work towards that goalpost. Don't move it when it comes to women. And so that's the first part of the question. I think we've always wanted the standard to be equal. And then the second part, how do we take more risk? And this is the answer is quite simplistic to me, but it's what has worked. It's throw your hat in the ring. Just do it afraid. Do it afraid. There was a poll that came out. I can't remember by who, but it said that when there are like job openings and men are not qualified, they still apply anyway. But women wait till they can tick all the boxes before they apply. And since I saw that poll, I think I saw it maybe like 10 years ago, I started applying for things that, I started applying for anything that I felt like I could do. Even if I didn't have all the qualifications, I would throw my hat in the ring, and I would advise other people, throw your hat in the ring and then convince the decision makers that you're worth a shot.
Yeah, and what a great message to end on, because sadly we're running out of time rapidly with just 1 minute to go. So before we completely time out, I just want to extend a really big thank you to our 3 panelists for joining us this evening, to all 3 of you for your insights and your experience. It really has been truly inspiring listening to you and listening to your stories. To our audience, I thank you for joining us and all your questions. I hope you've found it as interesting and inspiring as I have. could I just ask you to make sure you do the short poll, which will follow on, so that we know what you liked, what you didn't like, how we can put on similar events in the future. Apparently it will take no longer than 2 minutes of your time. We are going to share the recording of the event, so you can come catch up on it. So do look out for any kind of details in your inbox, which takes me exactly to 7 o'clock.
Yeah. And
Lorna,
please, please, can I mention there are 2 beloved friends and family from Southampton that aren't with us now, and I just want to mention them. It's a tribute in memory of my cousin, Dr. Larry Day, who was a campus GP and principal teaching fellow who passed away last July unexpectedly, and my dearest girlfriend, Claire Fuller, who passed away in May. 2 very beloved Southampton people, and I just wanted to take part tonight in tribute and in memory of them. Thank you.
That's really fantastic, Lorna, and again a really wonderful way to end. So thank you everybody for joining us this evening. Once again, a huge thanks to our panelists. It's been truly tremendous being with you, and look forward to seeing you again. Take care everybody, and thank you so much. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye. Thank you.